Okay, guys, make sure I got my right microphone on today. Welcome back to it. It's a beautiful day in the Florida Panhandle. Day 4 of 5. We're rolling towards the end of this thing. We've got the last of 7 modules dealing with selection and award. Start off this morning with a couple breakout exercises. But let's get your microphones initialized. First of all, if you're here and ready to go, give me a green thumbs up. We're still missing, it looks like, 2 people. Most people are good to go. Turn on your microphone, say good morning. And
good morning.
Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jim.
All right.
Good morning.
Okay, I'm going to mute everybody's microphone real quick. And turn my microphone back on. Let's talk about what we went through yesterday. I think we finished up modules 5 and 6. This is after source selection planning and developing evaluation factors, which is one of the critical items. We talked quite a bit about evaluation factors. We talked about preparing to issue the selection, the source selection, instructions to the source evaluation team. In module 5, we talked about the evaluation itself, the pre-evaluation activities, how to evaluate proposals, preparing an evaluation report. We did an exercise where we critiqued someone's evaluation report. And we talked in module 6 about discussions, the difference between clarifications, communications, and discussions. Discussions provide bidders an opportunity to revise their proposal. And it's, the goal is to get better terms for the FAA. Now we're about to start into a selection and award. And this is the last of 7 modules. I expect to finish this module today. So the only thing we'll be looking at tomorrow is a little bit of a review, preparation, and then give you a couple hours to answer 30 questions on multiple choice on your final exam. So the learning objectives are evaluating final proposals, making and documenting your source selection decision, determining contractor responsibility, notifying unsuccessful offers, conducting post-award briefings, and the thing that goes along with the making awards, how to deal with protests. So the first lesson is about evaluating final proposals. We're going to understand how to document and present the final proposal evaluation to the source selection official. So final proposal revisions, if you give bidders a chance to revise, they have to be evaluated against the same evaluation factors and sub-factors in the initial proposal revision. So so it's good when you ask for revisions to show some method, change bars or something, so you can find what changed, so you don't have to do the whole thing from scratch. It also needs to include an analysis of each offer's response to issues raised during the discussions. Remember, that's when we share the weakness, potential deficiencies, ask for clarifications, things to correct. And as with the initial evaluation of the proposal, we need, again, to identify strengths, deficiencies, and significant weaknesses of each offer's revised proposal. We then create the final evaluation report for the SSO. The final evaluation, the development of the final evaluation report is very similar to the evaluation of the initial evaluation report. So at this point, then the award is made without further discussion. So the final evaluation report, it reflects FAA's final evaluation and rating of all the proposers. It addresses successes at eliminating weaknesses and deficiencies. It's formatted very similar to the initial evaluation report, and it might include a comparative analysis, ranking of proposals, and usually some kind of an award recommendation. So when it's time to brief the SSO, the CO and the lead on the source evaluation team usually prepare and present a formal briefing to the SSO with the findings of the final evaluation. So it might include a description of the major aspects of each proposal in order to give the SSO an overview, estimated cost of each proposal, with comments on the validity, the probable cost to the government, an explanation of any variance between the proposed cost and the probable cost if we anticipate changes. The source evaluation team's rating of the proposals with cost considerations and a summary of significant differences. We need information about the offer's financial capabilities. Do they have the wherewithal? Can they cover operating costs sufficiently to perform this contract? And any other information that the source evaluation team thinks might be relevant to the SSO's decision-making process. You can make a recommendation to the SSO, but the final decision lies with the SSO. So this is the first of two back-to-back breakout exercises. I've got a scenario. It's on page 228 in your student guide. It's on page 54 in your workbook. I want you to read the scenario, and just like always, there's a question at the end. Answer the questions in the notes section of your breakout room. Assign somebody to share your group's answers with the class. We're going to go back to the breakout debrief layout. This is where we're going to come back to after the breakout. So again, on page 228 of your guide, it's a brief scenario with a couple questions that I need you to answer afterwards. And we'll talk about those. Any questions before I put you in your breakout room for 20 minutes? I think we're getting really familiar with this exercise. So I'll go ahead and start breakouts, set a timer, and I'll see you in 20 minutes. And again, if you finish this early, give me a green thumbs up. You know, if all four groups give a green thumbs up, we'll close this out early and keep moving.
Early. What is today, 25th?
Okay, time to bring you guys back. Anybody remember Mr. Wizard, Drizzle, Drazzle, Drozzle, Drone? Time for this one to come home. That's stepping into the Wayback Machine, but 1960s cartoon. We've got you back in the main room, and we're going to talk about this decision between, where to go in my notes? There we go. Between dock you roll and dock this way. I don't know who comes up with these names, but they are hilarious. So somebody tell me what's going on. Let's go to question one. What are the issues in this case? What happened that triggered a protest?
Total collapse. They did not follow their own SIR. And it talked about technical being the most important, and pricing not to be considered as an important factor. And they went with LPTA when it was a best value solicitation. So from the start, they went the opposite way of what they had put out on the street.
Which is interesting. I reading this case, I wonder, how can they do that? How can maybe all they ever do is LPTA and they follow an LPTA methodology, even though this one should have been more of a trade-off. it's really hard to understand how they fell into that methodology. And even more striking, how nobody up the chain caught it. You know, the SET lead, the CO, and the SSO rather. Nobody raised a red flag. It went all the way through to award without some level of discomfort. So nothing documented, nothing in the report, and it seemed, although they didn't call it LPTA, it seemed pretty much that they just went about the lowest price, technically acceptable.
Exactly. And they didn't put any kind of explanation. They didn't write anything up according to the discussions they had. You know, what was corrected, to what degree it was corrected, or anything. I mean, it was the ball was dropped on every level on this one.
Yeah, no paper trail whatsoever. This, I think, is a fairly easy protest on the part of Dock and Roll, because the evaluation team didn't do anything to protect themselves. They didn't have any kind of documentation in place to support their decision making. Let me throw this out to anybody else. Oh, what could the agency have done better?
Documented their results, documented their evaluation a lot better, especially from the initial. I
Yeah.
think if they document the initial better, you could probably have more productive discussions with the vendors, and could have led to a better revised proposal and maybe even closer pricing based on whatever the weaknesses were that you had them address.
Yeah, the initial evaluation, it would have set the stage for ongoing evaluations. You could have seen what changed as a result of discussions. You could have seen the how the evaluations changed as proposals were revised. So they should have done that, even if they just at the discussions, even if they just named somebody to take notes, that would have been a starting point. Just document everything that was discussed. But there didn't seem to be any of that. So I think this was pretty straightforward. Any other comments on this? Bottom line is they laid out a procedure and didn't follow it at all. It's not only good enough just to follow your procedure, you have to document that you follow the procedure. You have to show the results, the interim results and the final recommendation results or final evaluation results as the product of following the procedure that you laid out. So they laid out a procedure and then completely ignored it. So I get the impression that Doc this way had friends at the FAA. They seem to bend over backwards to try to help them into the award in this case, and it blew up in their faces. And we're going to see if you guys don't do better on this. That was scenario one. I told you we've got back-to-back scenarios. So now you guys have an opportunity to make your own evaluation and award. This is on page, let's see, that was 228. This is on page 232 of your participant guide. And it's on page, make sure we got plenty of time. Okay, tell you what, we'll do the evaluation. We'll let you prepare for it, put you in your breakout rooms, give you 30 minutes to prepare for it, and then we'll take a 10-minute break before we discuss it. Does that sound like a reasonable approach? Okay. What I failed to do last time, I'm going to copy and put this. You're going to read the scenario, and then you're going to turn to the handout. If you haven't downloaded the handout yet, it's in the course materials. And on page 34 of the handout, there is a SET final evaluation report that I want you to look at. And you're going to, based on their evaluation report, you can perform a comparative analysis and recommend an offer as an award to the SSO. and then be prepared to justify your recommendation.
Is there a workbook page?
Yes, workbook page 34,
34.
student guide page 232. Excuse me, my apologies. It's workbook page 58.
Oh, 58.
Yes. Student guide page 232 and handout page 34.
Okay, got it.
So I'm going to paste the student instructions into the exercise section. If it's okay, you'll take a look at it, evaluate it, think about your arguments, put together your recommendation, comparing. There are 3 different bidders that you're going to look at, and then we'll take a 10-minute break and come back after the break and discuss your results. So I'll start breakout rooms now, unless anybody has any questions. I'm starting breakout rooms for 30 minutes, and I'll say hello briefly before we start a 10-minute break.
Instructions, but
Yeah, I'm following your lead.
can you repeat that?
What'd you say, Susie?
This is Sally. Good morning, everybody. I was just saying to my team I was following their lead as I try and jump back in. Over.
Welcome back, Sally.
Yep,
Welcome
we're
back.
good.
It's good to have you back. We missed your voice in discussions yesterday. I'm glad you're back here.
Well, thank you for that, and glad to be back.
This is an interesting case we just looked at, and it's to make a recommendation. You could easily have spent a couple of hours on this thing, but we only had 30 minutes, so it required some skimming. It also requires us to take a break before we come back and talk about it. We missed our first break. If you're like me, coffee addicted, you need those breaks in a timely fashion. So I'm going to put you in a 10-minute break first, and then we'll come back and talk about our recommendation of which one of those 3 bidders we're going to ask the SSO to extend the contract to. So back in the lobby. See you in 10 minutes.
Jim, can you
Yes.
help me? What page so I can go and review those in the guidebook or whatever reference?
Yeah. Hold on. Let me start this
Thank you.
clock. Okay. It's in the, took you away from the instructions page. This is in the student guide on page 232. Your workbook is page 58. Now, you're not going to find a lot of information on page 232 or page 58, but in addition, there's something called a handout. If you look in the course materials, the 3rd document is a source selection handout. And on the PDF, not the numbered page at the bottom, but the PDF page 34 of the handout, it's the beginning of 10 or 11 pages where the source evaluation team has done an admirable job of evaluating the 3 bidders. And we're supposed to now review their evaluation and make a recommendation.
Okay, what page again, please, in the handout?
And the handout on PDF page 34.
Thank you.
All right, Sally, good to have you back.
Thank you.
Oops. Okay, guys, welcome back. It's time to talk about and justify our recommendation to the SSO for which of the 3 bidders we think is most suitable. You can see from across the board, it looks like people are leaning heavily towards Sharkey. Let's do this first. Make sure everybody made it back from the break. A little late on the break this time because of the case preparation, but give me a green thumbs up if you're back and ready to roll forward. 17 people, including Mark and myself. So we're back now that Sally's back. We got the full team. We're back at full strength, ready to go. Okay, now because I love the name, I'm gonna start with Frank Burns. Ask Frank Burns, could you make your recommendation to the SSO and justify your selection?
In IT and management. Also, they have a bad track record with cartoons because of Wile E. Coyote. I just had to throw that in there. Any company named Acme should be under scrutiny. Do It All meets the requirements, but they don't exceed in anything but safety, and they do have significant weaknesses. Sharkey Technology is what we picked. Their proposal had no weaknesses, showed excellent ratings and exceeding an understanding of the requirements. The approach, their management, and past performance. Sharkey also received a very good rating on safety because all requirements were met. Sharkey's higher as far as cost, but they do meet the requirements. That's pretty much what we're going to recommend.
Billy, do you think the additional cost is justified by the additional value presented by Sharkey?
From someone in construction operations and maintenance, yes. Just for the management experience alone.
Okay, just for the management experience alone.
That's my personal opinion. Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody have any? First of all, did anybody not choose Sharkey? I think they kind of stacked the deck on this. Did any group? I'm looking across. It looks like everybody chose Sharkey. Can anybody touch on justification for the Sharkey decision that Billy didn't expound upon?
I think the fact that Sharkey had they're using some of their own money to help in process improvements and investments in that area, and then also some of the labor efficiencies that they included in their approach. I think that's definitely something to, in terms of trade-off, you like that, and then their experience is superior to Do It All's experience. So I think those three factors would justify you paying $2 million more.
Okay, so if you were assigned this as a project manager to execute this contract, would you feel comfortable, Christian, working with Sharkey?
Absolutely.
Okay. Anybody else? You know, the process for making a recommendation. Of course, when you do your evaluation, you're not allowed to compare. But when you make your recommendation, you can. I mean, the whole purpose of making a recommendation is to compare the three. And, yes.
Right. And Team One kind of stole our thunder, Christian. We went with Sharkey as well.
Okay. Did was Sally get back in time to work with you on this recommendation?
Yeah, a little bit. We clued her in, but she wanted to go back and read everything on her own. So she might have a little more input later, I guess.
Okay.
Well,
Sally,
that is very gracious of you. I would say I was a bit late, as I told you I would be, Jim. So thank you, team, for not throwing me under the bus. Appreciate that.
Hey, we're a team, Sally. We're a team.
Okay. Well, we're glad you're back. One approach to doing evaluation is you pick the high bidder and pick the next one and do a point to point. It's okay when you make a recommendation. This is the time where it's okay to compare them against each other. and talk about strengths and weaknesses between the two, and then pick the next one and do another comparison, strength and weaknesses. So you show compared to Sharkey versus Do It All and Sharkey versus Acme.
You know, something that this is Brad from Group 2.
Hey, Brad.
Yeah, you know, I can totally understand and see why Sharky's a favorite on this particular exercise. However, I went back and reread the whole thing as much as I could. I ran out of time, and our group didn't really have time to get together and discuss it as a group for very long. But one thing I noted is that the narratives for a couple of them, and I wasn't finished. The narrative statements do not match the ratings in a couple of these, and that's important because those are the type of things that can definitely flag it for a protest. For example, Do It All received a very good rating, but if you read the narrative, everything in the narrative states excellent over and over again, and vice versa for Sharky. If you go to their past performance narrative, it says very good throughout the narrative, but they got an excellent for their overall rating. So just a point that I wanted to make.
Brad, that's an exceptionally good catch. I'll put that into my notes for this case study for next time I teach this class. That's a very, very interesting point. And you're right. If the two don't match up, you're exposing yourself. When all these evaluations and ratings come up in discovery, you're exposing yourself to some weaknesses in the event of a protest. Very, very good point. Thank you for that. We will have, by the way, an opportunity to, what's the next step now that we made a selection for Sharkey? The next step is that Acme and Do It All ask for a post-award conference. We asked for an opportunity to hear how and why they were weak, and so we can. I'm going to again a case study a couple hours from now. I'm going to assign Do It All to one group and Acme to another group, and ask you to prepare for the debriefing, the unsuccessful bidder debriefing. So we'll have a chance to revisit the this handout evaluation in just a little bit. But good job. It's also, I think, as an instructor, I think it's very helpful to see a good evaluation. Yeah, Brad pointed out there were some shortcomings, but all in all, I thought they did a pretty thorough job of documenting the evaluation process and how they came up with their decisions. So we've got about another 30 minutes before we take our next break. I'm going to talk about the next lesson, which is making and documenting source selection decisions. So after completing this lesson, we'll be able to explain the process for making and documenting the source selection decision, which is sort of the essence of the case that we just went through. So when you're using the lowest price technically acceptable methodology, the SSO award to contractor with the, like I said, the lowest price for of the group that are deemed technically acceptable. But when you use the trade-off methodology, which is used for best value determination, SEO has to compare the strengths and deficiencies and weaknesses and the cost price of competing proposals, analyze the differences between the proposals, and determine which one provides the best value then to the government. So it shouldn't be a mechanical decision relying only on numerical or color or adjectival ratings. It needs to kind of get into the weeds and sort of really develop a feeling for the three, or in this case three, but generally it could be any number of proposers. The SSO has broad discretionary power in selecting a source, regardless of what the source evaluation team recommends. She or he can reach a different conclusion based on the facts presented or based on their own independent evaluation. If they do decide for a bidder that is not the recommendation of the source evaluation team, it needs to be documented. How was it that the SSO came to this other decision. So before an SSO can select a higher price proposal that has been deemed technically superior to a lower price but technically acceptable one, it has to consider whether the non-cost or non-price superiority warrants the price premium. If that additional value that's brought to the government is worth the higher price. That's accomplished by conducting a trade-off analysis. So this decision tree is the lowest price proposal superior in terms of price, non-price factors? If it's yes, then it's easy. Then you award the lowest price offer. If no, then it needs to be justified. So are there meaningful distinctions between the non-price cost portions of the proposal? If no, then it's okay to go to the lower. If yes, you have to conduct a trade-off analysis and show basically that it's worth it in terms of additional value to the government to award the contract to the bidder that is not the lowest price. So there's no specified required process for performing a trade-off analysis. Paired comparison is one of the ways to do the analysis, where you look at two proposals, two at a time, and evaluate them against each other. The winner of that is then compared to the next proposal and on down the line. So you're only ever comparing two at a time in your as part of your trade-off analysis. It can't help but be a subjective process. It assesses the relative value and impact of cost price, non-price, non-cost, non-price differences. So the SSO should consider the total evaluated price, strengths, weaknesses, risks, any deficiencies, the significance of the deficiencies, and whether the benefits, like we said time and time again, is this additional benefit worth the price premium? So we've got a short breakout session for a faulty trade-off analysis case study. This is on page 236 in your participant guide, and if you're using the workbook, it's on page 59. So I'm going to put you in your breakout rooms for about 15 minutes. We'll discuss afterwards. It's going to take about 5 minutes. That'll take us right about to the top of the hour, and it'll lead us right to our next break. Sure, and put the instructions in the breakout exercise instructions area. It's something I forgot to do last time. Again, it's in your student guide, page 236, workbook, page 59. It's a short scenario. Read the scenario, answer the questions, and you'll have 15 minutes to prepare as a group. Excuse me. Any questions before I send you off? Very good. See you in 15. Okay, guys, it should be a fairly short discussion, but let's talk about this. And after we finish this discussion, we'll take our next break. Looking at this fictional scenario, how do you think this case was decided? This is SEI, Systems Engineering International, is one of the offers. Responded to a solicitation. Somebody give me an overview of what happened and how they think this case was decided. Anybody want to volunteer?
I will volunteer from the best value team. So SEI bid on some FAA work, and they were one of 10 proposals that were received. And the evaluation was based on 2 non-cost factors, or 3, I guess, that when combined were more important than price. And SEI was rated an overall marginal with the lowest price, and they submitted a protest asserting that they were unfairly excluded from the trade-off consideration. And our group discussed kind
Good
of that
synopsis. Very good
a
synopsis. Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. And our group discussed that, typically a marginal is, without having the SIR and the definition of, how they define marginal, but typically a marginal is something where a proposal like hasn't demonstrated an adequate approach or understanding of the requirements. And a lot of times when we'll define marginal as something that's not acceptable, but can be made acceptable through discussions, right? They're not completely unacceptable, but they're just not there. And we need to go into discussions. But here, since the government had some highly technically rated proposals that were okay in price, they didn't need to go into discussions. So we felt that this case was dismissed, given that SEI didn't have any ability to protest, given that their technical factors were rated marginal, and the order of importance were that non-price factors, when combined, were more important than price. So we couldn't, as the government couldn't even get to their proposal to perform a trade-off with it because they were rated as a marginal.
Okay. So you think because they're marginal, it's okay not to individually rate them as part of the trade-off? Given that you had a couple others that were granted more expensive, but also acceptable, even very good. Does anybody think that this protest was sustained? I'm looking at some of the other groups. Does any group think that this protest was sustained?
They had not a leg to stand on.
Systems Engineering International, not a leg to stand on. Okay, that's what I would have thought. I mean, they're marginal. Why waste time with somebody who's marginal when we got some people that are considered very good? And but this wasn't actually an FAA case. This was fictionalized to make it FAA. This actually occurred at the Environmental Protection Agency, and the GAO sustained the protest, and they want on to say that an agency can select a higher price proposal that's been rated technically superior, but it has an obligation to evaluate and explain why, even so somebody is marginal, why their lower price didn't justify a selection. They need to show that the additional price was worth it for somebody that was better qualified to perform the job. So it was actually sustained. I don't know if they had to turn around, give it to SEI, or turn around and re-evaluate SEI, but I would imagine after a protest, they probably weren't evaluated very highly.
My question on that, Jim, because we could only assume with the information that we had, but I would assume that in the write-up from the team, it would have noted their deficiencies and so forth for why they were marginal, and that would have been the basis for not including them, even though they had a lower price. And also, this wasn't an LPTA solicitation, it was for best value. So, and the most important thing was the technical evaluation versus the price.
Yeah, it would be fairly easy, I think, to justify, but the fact that they didn't even include them in the trade-off is where they got their hands slapped by the Government Accountability Office. They weren't even included. So even though they were rated marginal, if they were deficient, then they're not acceptable. We're not you're no further consideration. But they weren't. They were marginal. So they were rated very lowly. The evaluation, they still have the obligation to show or explain why the technical superiority warrants the price premium. Why this difference between marginal versus what was the other, very good, is worth the additional money that the government is paying for that difference between marginal and very good.
Right. And that's why my question to you is, if the team had, dotted their I's, crossed their T's, and, made a definite explanation or justification of why they weren't considered, would that have reversed and they could have still awarded it to who they thought were the most superior firm?
100%. I mean, something. Okay. Yeah. Even just a line that shows we looked at SEI, they were marginal, and we could not justify other way around. The paying the additional price for somebody who is very good was well worth the money and value to the government over the lower price that was only marginal. That's all they needed to say, and they would have been okay. But the fact that they didn't even address it, they weren't eliminated. They just didn't get picked up in the trade-off analysis, and they weren't considered, and that left them open to a protest, which ended up, again, this is EPA, not FAA, but it ended up being a successful protest.
Yeah, I was going to say, not bragging on FAA, but FAA would have, even if it took more time, we have to be dedicated to the source selection, and that means evaluating each one unless they're late and not to be considered. If they're being considered and evaluated, we have to specify, all of their deficiencies and so forth. And in the summary statement, you have to say why you selected the firm that you did over the others. That's just part of, the ABCs of your write-up.
I'm glad you brought that up, Anthony, because you notice compared to FAR, there's a big difference in philosophy. The FAA values their bidders, even the losers, in a given competition. And the whole purpose then of these, post-award debriefing is to educate these companies, to put them in a position to be successful down the road. We want them to come around. We want to encourage as much competition as possible. We want to support and show them it was fair in our approach. And this is how you'll be right in there with the competition next time we have an opportunity to bid. So there's a very different approach. And so I agree with you. I think the FAA would have taken the time to write up and prepare the weaknesses and deficiencies for that particular bidder.
And the one last thing, when I was in the A&E and construction field, one of the other things we always put up front is that, and it worked because we never had a protest, but we would actually invite them for debriefing. And we always use that as a tool to say, look, you didn't get this one, but if you, strengthen this area, we will point out where they were deficient and how they might be successful on the next one.
That's it. You worked in construction and never had a protest?
Nope.
Anthony, that's
not
super.
At FAA. I had a few at Department of Labor and Job Corps, but not here at FAA.
Wow, that's superhuman. Okay, that's neat. So it tells me it really pays off to put energy and effort into maintaining the relationship with bidders, even unsuccessful bidders. I appreciate that insight. Okay, I'm getting back to the top of the hour schedule. I'm sorry. Anybody else? Any other comments on this before we move on?
Well, I was just going to add, I used to work for Army Corps of Engineers back in the day, and they said we would get protests, but they said you can get protests and you probably will, but we never won, but you can't lose them. So that was, basically dot your I's, cross your T's. So if we get a protest and we fight it, we will win, that kind of thing. So be thorough.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I was so surprised that Anthony in construction, which tends to be a very contentious field. I was surprised that he never had any protests. Must have really bent over backwards to support those relationships to avoid protests, because a lot of areas, especially when the dollar volumes go up, protest is automatic. We lose, we're not going to evaluate the merits of our sloppy proposal or the lack of merits. We're just going to protest and see what happens.
Yeah, in 8 years we were good to go.
Wow.
And then they moved it down to Dallas Fort Worth. But in the 8 years that we had it at headquarters, no protests.
Wow. That's a compliment.
Oh, we were proud of that record.
You should be. Okay, guys, we've got 5 minutes after 11 on the East Coast. We're going to take a 10-minute break. When we come back, we're going to talk about documenting the source selection decision. And good news, nobody's going to grow old today in this course. I expect shortly after lunch, 3 o'clock is probably the latest we're going to go. We're probably going to be closer to 2 o'clock, but we'll get a better feel for that when we get a little closer to lunch. So see you after after a 10-minute break. You're going back into the lobby. I'm setting the timer, and I'll see you in 10. Okay, guys, welcome back. That was our last segment before lunch. We've got some discussions. I don't know if we'll have time for another breakout exercise, but we've got a few slides to get through, talking about contractor responsibility and documenting the source selection decision. And that should mostly take us up to where we're going to be at lunch. We have let me count them, 2 breakout exercises left. One is the one I hinted at, where we're going to go back to one of the losing bidders as part of the handout and give them a debrief. And that will be the next breakout exercise. And then we'll finish on an exercise that deals with a protest that came in a little bit late. First, let's make sure everybody's back. Everybody got their coffees ready. Give me a green thumbs up. Let me know you're here and ready to go. Okay, very good. So the source selection decision document, it should include a description, of course, of the acquisition, what it's all about, a list of everybody that bid on this, a summary of significant strengths and weaknesses or deficiencies of each offeror's proposal. I'd like to see a summary sheet, a single sheet, and kind of gives an overview of the whole thing, an explanation of a trade-off decision, including the rationale for selecting a higher price, technically superior offer. And like we discussed from the previous case, it doesn't have to be exhaustive, but you do have to show if somebody still has a bid in there, even though they're lower price, that it's worth paying the premium, the additional value you're going to get for the government. And of course, your reasoning behind selecting this successful offer. And unlike the evaluation, you can create that 2 at a time, pairwise comparison to show one's better than the other. So this next lesson has to do with contractor responsibility. We're going to talk about the requirement for determining contractor responsibility, exactly what that means. And before the contract can be awarded, the CO has to make a determination that prospective contractor is responsible, that they are capable of performing this the work in the solicitation. So what constitutes a responsible contractor? First, that the satisfactory record of past performance. If you look back in past performance and they blew up, they bombed, they failed, they were difficult to deal with, it's probably not a very responsible contractor. They've got the necessary organization, experience, of course, the accounting and system in place, operational controls, technical skills required to do this. Their technical equipment and facilities that they have, be it production, construction, whatever, either they have them available or they have the ability to obtain them. They have the financial resources to perform the contract. Just starting with basic working capital. Do I have the working capital to fund the upfront work before I start to get my billing and get my initial invoices paid? Do they have a satisfactory record of ethics, good business ethics, and integrity in dealing with other companies? Do we get if we look at them on what's it, the BBB, the business rankings, do they come in low? They come in reasonable? They come in high? And any otherwise qualified, are they generally qualified and eligible? I mean, have they been disbarred? Have they been suspended from operation? Have they lost their license for some other reason? That would be indicators that they're not responsible for some reason. So other sources for determining, some of the sources for determining responsible contractor include CPARs. Of course, you can get a rating, evaluation of their performance. Another contractor, I would never leave it to that. If they have a negative rating, you have the obligation of contacting somebody. Matter of fact, there's an exam question about that. If you get a low past performance report, you have an obligation of contacting somebody who was involved in that contract to understand the circumstances. Ideally, get more than one point of view of the circumstances. The government website, SAM, if there are any SAM exclusions, information, of course, provided by the offeror themselves. Records and experience data from contracting offices, audit offices, contract administration offices, other agencies that might have worked with this, and other sources. There's places to go to at least start the research for determining responsibility of a given contractor. So a CO needs to document and support any determination that a contractor is non-responsible. So the documentation should include pre-award survey reports, performance records, and any other data or information. But it needs to be documented primarily because it's an invitation for a protest. So this is lesson 4 in this module about notifying unsuccessful offers and conducting post-award debriefings. We're going to talk about or describe the process for notifying unsuccessful offers and conducting post-award briefings. Anybody here been involved in post-award briefings for unsuccessful offers? I know, Anthony, you in your past construction experience did a very good job of debriefing, keep them from protesting. Anybody involved in that on a regular basis?
This is Sally. Good morning, everybody. I've been
Hey, Sally.
involved with some actions like that, not recently, but in the past, and on some rather large contracts, and very important to have the I's dotted and T's crossed when you're doing that. But for a very large award, when we were saying that it was I think it might have been the first time AMS was used to terminate a contract for lack of performance, which AMS allows, but the FAR has different rules on. I worked for DoD for a while, so I'm a little familiar with the FAR as well. But it was very important to have metrics that showed that the performance was past the point, where you couldn't even do a letter for cure or something like that, and was terminated for the government, by the government on that basis.
Okay.
So But I want to add, though, too, for CPARs and for negative experience, you have to look at time marching on, because maybe in the past they had some, poor performance and stuff, and had a wake up call, and they change things, have new people in, etc. Because I've had the experience with a contractor that I thought at the time, boy, if I could, I'd never hire them again. But then now I'm like so pleased with them. But it's, 10 years later, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. So everything in context, grain of salt, that kind of thing.
So it brings up a couple good points. Number one, people and personalities and names are very, very important because they change. And a personality conflict in one contract might not be there. If they clean house or they take seriously their performance, they might make personnel changes. And I think we talked about that yesterday, day before yesterday.
This is Brett. Yeah, we discussed that in the beginning, superintendents and knowing the names on the contracts and things like that. But I will tell you, it happens a lot that slips through the cracks as far as contractors. Whoever the COR is and local SSCs, and it doesn't matter. I deal with a lot of defense intelligence, so it's a total different ballgame. But they're supposed to critique at the end of every job the COR and the CO on how the contractor performed, the requirements of the contract, and personnel, technical issues, and a whole 9 yards. And a lot of times that doesn't happen. So you might get a contractor that's been in the agency for 10 years and, his past performance hasn't been upgraded or changed in 5 years.
I see.
But the key personnel, hasn't changed. So, they do good work and so forth and so on. But the checks and balances aren't being followed. And we're trying to correct that in engineering infrastructure and tech ops.
Yeah, Brent, it's one of the hardest things to do is to finish the closeout paperwork and get all that documentation into CPARs because, the work is done psychologically. I finished the project. It's difficult to go back. It doesn't feel like progress anymore to go back and document where you were, but it's very, very important for downstream agencies when they're considering this contractor. In CPARs, do you include the names of the people on the contracting team? Is that documented in CPARs?
Just the CO or the BLM, PMAL personnel.
Okay.
Not the other thing is like you have to do a JI, joint acceptance of sports, and a CI, contractors acceptance, and a lot of that doesn't get put in KSN and other avenues that we have that actually it helps the contractor that a lot of people don't get to see because it doesn't get out of engineering or it goes to the program office and just sits there.
Interesting. I wanted to make another point. It popped into my mind while Sally was talking. And again, I was reflecting on Anthony's impressive experience in avoiding protests. There's a change management guru at MIT, a guy named Ed Schein. If you're really interested in change management, he kind of wrote the book on it. But one of the things he says time and time again is you can't hide intent. And if you bring in a contractor for a debriefing and your intent is, let's just get rid of this guy, I mean, they're going to see through you like a pane of glass. And it's going to rile their feathers. They're going to feel disrespected, and the probability of protest just went up. But if your intent is really, I care about these people, I want to put them in a position to succeed in the future. Here's where you need to improve in order to be competitive and get contracts with our agency in the future. If that's your intent, they're going to see that and they're going to appreciate that. And I don't know the people that worked with Anthony on his team, but I imagine they probably had really positive intentions toward the contractors that they brought into debriefings.
Well, and along those lines, Jim, that the contract I was talking about before was a major contract. And, the likelihood of people protesting and going to Congress even on it was very high. And so what we did is led up to that meeting where we've gone through this, we've had metrics. I actually worked at the department and was working with the FAA on this. And, it wasn't just one meeting. There were several opportunities. How are you addressing this? We see this in these metrics and things like that, so that there's an understanding of how we got to that point.
Okay.
So
One of the things I think I would ask is if they're big enough to have an attorney on staff, your probability of a protest just went up appreciably, because it doesn't cost them anything anyway. If you got an attorney on staff, that attorney is generally looking for something to do. So lawyered up firms tend to protest just to stay in practice. Okay, so the CO notifies the offerers that participated in a given solicitation that they may request a single debriefing. They have 3 working days from the receipt of the award notification to ask for that debriefing. It's not mandatory, but for the life of me, I can't imagine somebody who put the time in to submit a significant proposal that they wouldn't ask for a debriefing to try to learn where they're weak and how to improve for the next proposal. So a debriefing explains the rationale, of course, for the exclusion. It's focused on fair treatment. We've got to get that communicated. And again, you can't hide intent. So you need to have the intention to be fair and reasonable with the bidder. Assures the offer that the appropriately qualified personnel evaluated the proposal. It identifies strengths and weaknesses so they can understand where they're good and where they need improvement. Solicits feedback about the screening information request process, any communications in the source selection. So we want feedback from them. How can we be better at the FAA at keeping them informed and meeting their needs as a bidder? And it's designed to reduce misunderstandings. And of course, ultimately, the desire is to reduce the risk of protests. And for the FAA and AMS, the big desire is to put this bidder that just lost in a position to be more competitive and be successful in the future. And the FAA, we believe firmly that we benefit from increased competition. So the briefing, as what it is it's just as important as what is not. And what it's not a page by page analysis of their proposal. You're not going to go through every page and tell them how to rewrite their proposal to be successful. It's not a point by point comparison of their offer to other people's offers, and it's not an invitation for debate, or it's not asking them to put the FAA on the defensive about why we chose the bidder that we did, and we shouldn't be in a position to have to defend our evaluation results. So the CO informs the offer of the scheduling of and debriefing date if they choose within that 3-day window that they do want a debriefing by electronic means with return receipt, so that nobody can say we weren't told. If they request a later debriefing, we need to get them to acknowledge in writing that it was offered at an earlier date, but they chose the request later instead. The methods and location, the CO debriefs one unsuccessful offer at a time. You don't put them in a room. I read a story about Home Depot doing that, putting multiple bidders in a room, and it was it was bordered on torture the way they were treating suppliers to Home Depot. But we don't do that. We deal with one at a time. We tell them what where they're deficient, how they can improve. The CO selects the method and the location. It can be face-to-face. I would prefer face-to-face. It can also be on the telephone or electronic means, Zoom or Teams meeting, I guess we use in the FAA. So who needs to attend? The CO selects the attendees for the FAA side. So, of course, the CO would attend, but also the SET members, how many is up to the CO, and legal counsel, especially if you anticipate that the vendor might protest. The CO asks the offerer to identify all the individuals that they intend to bring to the debriefing by name and position. But typically, we don't restrict the number of attendees unless we're in a room with space limitations for some reason. I'm getting some background noise. I'm going to mute everybody's mic real quick. Okay, turn mine back on. Talk about preparing for the debriefing. Preparation, of course, depends on the complexity of the source selection. It may be as simple as just a couple charts. It could be a dry run, a rehearsal, script. You'll understand different people playing different roles and how we're going to conduct it. It kind of depends on the complexity. So there's no specific format for preparing for the debriefing. So it really varies by project. The information that's provided includes an evaluation rating, communication of the significant strengths and weaknesses of the bidder, any deficiencies in their proposal. You will talk to offerers about their total evaluated price and cost, and the awardee's total evaluated price and cost without we're not allowed to expound upon rates or margins, and a summary of the rationale for the award decision. So how do you handle questions? That can be a little touchy, especially if a bidder feels offended or unhappy or even angry. I recommend don't answer questions on the fly. Take the questions, thank you, we'll prepare an answer and get back to you. Ideally, the CO gets all the questions in writing, and the CO and the other FAA personnel, they caucus to formulate a response. But try to avoid shooting on the hip or answering questions on the fly. So we've got a breakout exercise that we're looking at, and it's this one that I hinted to you. It's using the same handout material, which was the SET final evaluation report, where we evaluated Sharkey, Do It All, and Acme Engineering. We're going back to that, and I'm going to ask specific groups to prepare a debriefing for the other groups. But that's 30 minutes in a breakout room, and then an opportunity to go through the debriefing. It is about 20 to,
page 59.
20 to 12. It's on. It's in your guide on page 245, and it's in the workbook on page 61.
Oh, 61. Page 61. Can you repeat the guide again, Jim, please?
Yeah, the student guide, the participant guide, page 245.
245. Okay.
And if you're using the workbook, it's in the workbook on page 61. Now, it's going to refer you to the handout. You're going to have to use the handout again, and the handout's on page 34. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask teams 1 and 2 to work with Acme Engineering, and teams 3 and 4 to work with Do It All Corporation. And then one of the two is going to perform the debrief for Acme, either group 1 or 2, and either group 3 or 4 is going to perform the debrief for Do It All.
Just as a note, just as a note, the handout page is actually 33.
33, not 34. Okay, I appreciate that. Correct that in my notes. I look at 2 pages at a time, a 2-page per layout, so I might get it a little bit wrong. Okay. Okay, so actually, I'm looking at this exercise. I'm not asking you to perform the debrief. I'm asking you to answer the questions associated with the bidder. So groups 1 and 2 are going to answer the questions associated with Acme. Group 3 and 4 are going to answer the questions associated with Do It All. But we're up against a time constraint. Like I said, it's about 20 to 12 right now. I think it makes sense to do this after lunch. Anybody have any other sense? I think the only person who's really impacted is Joshua in Juneau, Alaska.
I'm ready for breakfast.
You're ready for breakfast? Okay. Since it's 20 to 8 in the morning, why don't we give you 60 minutes? Joshua, you get breakfast. The rest of us will get lunch. And when we come back, I'll put you into the breakout rooms. We'll be going through that same handout section on the page 33, SCT Final Evaluation Report. And we'll do that when we get back. So if we're good to go, you're going into the lobby. I'll set a timer for 60 minutes, and I'll see you on the other side of lunch. Thank you, guys. Okay, guys, welcome back. Let's figure out where we were when we took a break. See, we're just about to look at this exercise in preparing post-award debriefings on unsuccessful offers. I mean, give me a second, take a look at this. So there's a series of questions. I thought we were actually preparing the debriefing itself. That's not what this exercise is asking for. There's a series of about 6 questions that need to be answered. But let's start with this. We're back from lunch. I hope everybody had a wonderful lunch. I did. Why don't you give me a green thumbs up, like some of you already have? Now, this is the second to the last breakout exercise. It's a 1:45 Eastern. I'm guessing sometime around 2:30 we'll probably be done with this whole thing. But we'll see. Definitely before 3 o'clock, but probably sometime around 3:30. So that's going to leave for tomorrow just a review of the material for the exam. We'll start at 9 o'clock. We'll review for an hour, and then you'll take the exam from 10 to 12, and that'll be it for this 5-day course. Any questions on schedule?
Hello, can you hear me?
I hear you.
Do you think we could do like a mini review today as well, and then one tomorrow? Is
Sure.
that if there's enough time?
I think there's going to be lots of time, so we can definitely do a mini review today and then another review tomorrow. That's a good idea for anybody who wants. We'll make it optional. Anybody who wants to participate in the mini review today, they can stick around. Anybody who's anxious to get on with their lives, they can step out. We'll do that after we finish the material for today. All right, so I'm going to put you in your breakout groups. This will be for 30 minutes. Again, like all the breakout exercises, you're going to read the scenario and use the handout. Now, this is, again, page 33 33, I was told, instead of 34. 33 of the handout has the SET final evaluation report. It's the same handout, the same report that you used in exercise 2 exercises ago, except this time you're going to prepare yourself for debriefing with the unsuccessful bidders. So there's a series of 6 questions. You should answer those questions. And this would be information that you would provide to somebody who was unsuccessful. So I'm going to take us to breakout rooms. I'm going to put the instructions in here.
So, Jim,
Yes.
this is Anthony. Just to be clear, because I wrote Do It All Corporation before we went on break, because you were saying 1 and 2 would do one company, 3 and 4 would do. So are we, I haven't looked at the questions yet, so this might be a dumb question, but are we answering like we are the company Do It All?
No. What it is you read the scenario, unsuccessful bidders. Of course, you've got the handout that has all the information, the evaluation, but then you've got 6 questions, and the scenario is that these questions were asked by the unsuccessful bidder.
Okay.
And
we're answering it. We're part of the SPT team.
That's right. And so groups 1 and 2, you're going to answer questions for Acme Engineering. I'm putting this in the instructions. Groups 3 and 4, you're going to answer questions
Do It All.
For Do It All. It's my favorite company name. If I ever start another consulting or contracting business, I'll call Do It All. Do It All Corporation. Okay. So are we clear on what we're doing? 1 and 2.
Are you posting the questions in the instructions as well?
No, the questions are on page 245 of your student guide or page 61 of your workbook.
Thank you.
Okay. There are 6 questions to answer, and it's the questions are as if they were asked by a bidder. So what was the overall ranking of proposals? Please provide the evaluation costs and mission effectiveness and past performance ratings for our proposal and all other proposals. This is the question that the bidders are asking. Any other questions? Okay, fasten your seatbelt. I'm going to start your breakout groups for 30 minutes. And again, when I get close to finishing, I'll ask if anybody needs more time. But there should be a little bit of familiarity with this. Also, you're focusing just on one bidder, so it's not quite as much reading as it was last time. And otherwise, I'll see you in 30 minutes. Okay, guys, I've got you back in the main room. We've received our questions from the bidders about information they'd like or questions they have in preparation for the debriefing. We're going to start with groups 1 and 2 and talk about Acme. And then we'll go on to groups 3 and 4 and talk about Do It All. But you'll find some of the answers are the same in both cases. So let's, if it's okay, let's start with group 1. And question 1, what was the overall ranking of the proposals?
So number 1, we can only give in a debrief, you're only allowed to give the ranking of the debrief offer. So in this case, Acme was rated for factor 1, they were rated very good, with rating for sub-factor 1 good, sub-factor 2 good, and then sub-factor 3 excellent. And for sub-factor 2, you're rated good.
Okay. That's a great answer. You're absolutely right. You're not allowed to put out the information with the ratings of other bidders. That's not considered it might be giving away too much information. Group 2, what did you think? You agree with that? It's outlined, sir, we'll be discussing. Okay, so you just left it saying we're gonna discuss it in the debrief.
Yeah, although Nicole looked it up in AMS and it did say, I believe she found where it said you could only discuss their rating, but you could also share the successful offers.
Share the
Rating.
successful offers ratings. That's not my understanding.
Yeah, but maybe that's my misunderstanding, but I thought that's what she read. Anyway.
Christian, what's your understanding?
Yeah, my understanding is what you can share, you can share the total evaluated price of the winning offer, but not their actual ratings per se. You can't share that.
Yeah, because the pricing is actually going to be public knowledge to everyone when you award the contract, but you can't
Right.
put their ratings out there, individual category ratings. The best you can do in a debriefing is say, you were very good in this area. However, we found that the selected firm rated much higher than you. This were your shortcomings in that particular area, A, B, C.
Okay, but not actually tell how the other bidders or the successful
You
bidder
can't
was
get
actually
into
rated.
the nuts and bolts or
Correct.
Okay,
you might
so
get into
although
proprietary.
it seems obvious that the successful offer had a higher rating just because they were successful. However, if I understand you gentlemen correctly, you can't tell them how far apart they were, basically.
Right. No.
Right. You can't. I mean, I think the closest thing you can do is if you give them a basis for the evaluation. Like if you say, I mean, the basis of the award, like you just summarize it saying, we just thought that this company's strengths and weaknesses, or strengths or whatever, and their higher price outweigh paying, a lower price for a company. However it is, you can kind of explain the rationale, but in getting like into exactly how they were rated, then we don't necessarily do that. We don't do that.
Okay. What about question 2, group 2? The unsuccessful bidder is asked to please provide the evaluation cost and mission effectiveness and past performance ratings of our proposal and all other proposals. How did you answer that?
Sorry, this was Nicole. I had stepped away for a second. So in the FAA, we don't give the successful offers ratings. I guess in the FAR, when I came from DoD, we disclosed the information for the unsuccessful offer, their rating as compared to the successful offer and their rating to include non-price and price factors.
But you said in the FAA you don't do that.
Is that what I just heard? Yeah. In the
Yes,
FAA.
that's correct.
Yeah, that's correct. We don't in the FAA.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay,
Okay.
so
As I
for
said,
question,
you can point out to the company that's being debriefed, you can point out their shortcomings and what they need to do for a better proposal preparation for any upcoming ones, but you can't give up the information on the awarding companies, ratings inside.
yeah, that is interesting. I guess in my experience, we found that to be kind of useful, especially if the unsuccessful offer was so much lower technically to be able to show and kind of hedge protest odds, but that is good to know. Anyways, yeah, so for question 2, we would have responded and provided them with their rating from their proposal and not any of the information from the other offers proposals.
Okay. It looks like group 1 you did pretty much the same thing. Can only disclose Acme's past performance rating. Okay. Good. What about question 3? Is this a fair question from the bidder? What were the strengths, weaknesses, and deficiencies identified in our proposal? I think it's pretty
Yeah,
clear
that's a
from.
fair. Yep, it's a fair question, and we just took the summary of the strengths and weaknesses, cut and pasted that, and put it under there for Acme so they could see what we found.
It's interesting is group 1 and 2, your wording on answering this question from the bidder is identical because you both did the same thing, which is the right thing to do. We took it right out of the evaluation and pasted it in here. Here's how you performed, period. That's good. What about this question? They want to know what were the strengths, weaknesses, and deficiencies identified in the successful offeror's proposal.
Yeah,
That's
again,
question 4.
Yeah, we said we can only provide that for the offer that we're proposing. So we said we can't provide that, only just for Acme.
Okay, I like the way you did that in group 2. Pursuant to AMS XYZ, we will not be disclosing the details of the successful offeror's proposal.
Smart. Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Okay, the 5th question is
nip it in the bud.
Nip it in the bud. Get it early. Smart, Brad. 5th question, please provide information regarding the source of any past performance reference information that we did not provide. Was there any adverse past performance information that we did not know about that may have impacted the past performance evaluation?
So in looking at it, I couldn't necessarily tell if there was any information that came from a source that Acme did not provide. So I took the assumption that we didn't have any outside past performance information, and then also let them know that there was no adverse past performance information that impacted the past performance evaluation.
That makes sense. What about group 2? How did you handle that one? Source. Okay. So in general, the sources are protected. You're not allowed to tell if you do find something where they have not had an opportunity to respond, this before the receipt of the submissions, you need to disclose to them, here's an adverse past experience. Please take an opportunity to respond to this. But the names of individuals providing the information about the past performance need to be protected.
So we weren't, I don't know if anybody else on the team on group 2 concluded number 6. I talked with a couple of the team members during the breakout, and we weren't able to determine if that could be shared or not.
A copy of the source selection decision document?
Yeah, we said no, because essentially, if you're sharing that, you could be sharing the information, the ratings for the other offers. So no, we said no, you can't share that.
Now it does become public information, but there are exceptions to the Freedom of Information Act, and
be redacted, right?
Yeah, here's the evaluation, but it's heavily redacted, so you can see how we rated the winner, but that's about it.
So just to be clear, all of the comparative information and any specific names would be redacted.
Yes.
Right. That information is not to be shared.
Right. That's exactly right. Pursuant to AMS XYZ.
Pursuant to AMS XYZ. That's absolutely correct. Now that does become discoverable. In the event that there is a protest, it becomes discoverable. But there are limitations on how you can use information that's discovered in a legal proceeding.
Wouldn't that still be redacted? Maybe just not quite as heavily and redacted only to what their legal question and protest was?
Definitely. Okay. Yeah, you don't want to open it up to public information. Okay, what about
answer?
I'm sorry.
No, I was just concurring. Sorry.
Okay. I concur. It always makes me think of that movie, Catch Me If You Can. Okay, what about Burkhart's groups 3 and 4? Frank Burns and I don't see the name of breakout group 4 anymore, but it's we touch on a lot of things we can't say. What can we tell Do It All Incorporated?
You talking to 3 or 4, Jim?
Well, since you're online right now, Anthony, let's talk to 4.
Okay, I stepped in that one.
You just
What
volunteered.
was the question?
Way to
What was
go,
the-
Anthony.
Yeah.
I said I stepped in that one.
That's right.
Okay. We'll start with what was the overall ranking. So you did put the rankings in there, but remember we should avoid putting the overall rankings. You did accommodate their question.
That's for us, though.
Oh, that's for us
Yeah,
internally.
Britt did that
Yes,
for
that's
us
our
internally.
team notes.
Yeah, because we had to rehearse doing the debriefing. So we wanted to see it in front of us. That's not for them.
Oh, I see. Okay, you did this a little differently. So this isn't for their eyes. This is just internally.
Right.
So you can take a look at it. Okay.
Yeah, it's like our cheat sheet.
Okay. And Frank Burns, you guys put them in order, but you didn't give any indication of how they performed on any given factor.
Yeah, I guess that might have been too much though, for hearing everybody else's.
Yeah. Also the proposals weren't really ranked in that sense. So there really isn't much to provide other than what, well, first of all, and we're not going to provide a ranking about how they stand up against the others. So the second question, provide evaluation costs and mission effectiveness. So again, we can, we can't let them know how successful offer did on past performance. And we're not allowed to provide ratings of other unsuccessful offers, but we can kind of give them an idea on how they did.
Right. And that's where we would talk about where they fell short, what their deficiencies were, and how they can improve for
Okay.
future procurements.
Yeah. And I think a big part of that is question 3. What were the strengths, weaknesses, deficiencies of our proposal? I think that's where you have an opportunity to coach them up to do better in the past. But I think just
Right. And we take that data straight from our evaluation sheets.
Very good. I think it's pretty clear. Question 4 about what was the strengths and weaknesses and deficiencies of everybody else. You can't touch that one.
Right. AMS clause KKK 777 says no.
777. That's it. Says no. Don't touch it. Number 5 is another one we can't really answer. And number 6, can we receive a copy of the source selection? So
No.
in general, the answer is only heavily redacted or not at all.
Right.
Okay, very insightful. But that's why it's important to coordinate the answers, not to answer ad hoc, not to shoot from the hip and answer verbally during a discussion. Collect any questions, formulate an answer, clear it with legal, and work with the CO to make sure we're not exposing any information that we shouldn't during a debrief session.
Well, I like what Anthony said. Anthony, share with the group, if you would, about the dress rehearsal and the process in the real world.
Oh yeah. Well, we would send the questions out. They would have so many days to send their questions in. And of course, we'd get our team together, answer all of the questions, and then we would put it in written format to legal, make sure we're not putting our foot in our mouth and so forth, putting FAA in jeopardy of any type of protest or whatever. Then as we would come together and we would rehearse what we would say during the debriefing to answer their concerns and their questions. So we would rehearse it in the conference room. And of course, when you did the debriefing, you always set up a time, had a conference room lined up and so forth. And we always found out who they were bringing to the debriefing as well.
Was it a red flag if they're bringing their corporate attorney?
Yeah, most of the time, I can only think of one time we allowed someone to bring an attorney because we said, we always talked it up, but we want to help you try to get a contract with FAA. So it's no need for your attorney to come. We're going to point out to you where you were weak and what we think you can do to be successful in future procurements. And normally that works.
I like that approach. You show positive intent. The whole idea is to help them. Tell me, give me a couple words on the collaboration with FAA Legal. How was that work? Were they accessible? Were they supportive? Were they good coordinated?
Yeah, we've been very fortunate with the programs I work for. The attorneys that have been assigned to our unit, they've always been helpful, and we lean on them a lot. But I know one particular time my boss told me that she didn't agree with the attorney, and she said, they're giving you their legal suggestion, but you make the final decision. Well, but I said to myself, I'm gonna stay with the attorney. I'm not going
to. When I teach appropriations law, I refer a lot of people to, if you have an issue or a question or something you're not certain about, either go to ABP or go to FAA Corporate Legal or FAA, Legal Counsel. But I never knew how approachable they are. I heard a story.
Ours are very approachable. Don't you think so, Christian?
We've had with the program that I'm working on with the the FAA contract towers, we've had three different legal counsels, and I haven't really had issues with any of them at all. They've been very helpful. Yeah, they've been very helpful with any type of issues that we've had. But I think an important thing with like when you're doing like a source evaluation, you want to have legal involved like at the very beginning, like pretty much the whole time, but especially at
from day one.
They can help you. They can help you craft your evaluation factors the right way to make sure they can just give you tips or what have you, and then even when you're doing the evaluation, they can give you tips on how to write that so you can mitigate any proposal risk. You can't take all protest risk out. Excuse me. You can't take all of it out, but if you can write it the proper way, you can mitigate as much as possible.
You can minimize having a protest because we make sure they're with us from day one, and we've been fortunate. Like Kristen said, we have 3 attorneys. I even had one, Tom. He knows I work late. Tom would call me at 8, 9 o'clock at night, and we'd discuss stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, I would add to what both those gentlemen said that our legal has always been approachable and also open to discussion. I worked on a handful of large dollar contracts that were where the FAA used another agency's contract vehicle, the Department of Energy's contract vehicle for energy saving performance based contracts. So our attorney staff may or may not be familiar with the special authority granted in that contract. It's quite different, and navigating those first 2 or 3, I'll just put it this way, allowed me the opportunity to form some relationships with legal that I would have never otherwise had to do. And in some cases, the first attorney would say no, and I would respectfully request a second opinion, and they would punt it up to somebody else in the legal staff, and usually to the advantage of the effort that we were undertaking. But I would agree with both gentlemen. Our legal's always been approachable, and I think that's a byproduct of us being a much smaller agency compared to a lot of others.
Very interesting. Okay, good. Well, it's important that they need to be approachable in order to keep the FAA out of trouble. I've heard stories of private industry attorneys, actually big construction companies. You call their legal staff and they say, "Are you being sued?" They say, "No." And then, "Well, why are you bothering us?" They, they don't even get involved until it's getting ready to go to court. But it's good to see that that's not the case with the FAA. All right, so we've got 20 to 2. We've got a little bit of material. And thank you, by the way, for really good discussion. I enjoyed that. Got a little bit of material we're going to cover that has to do with everybody's favorite topic, protests. So we're going to explain a little bit about the FAA protest process in the next few slides, and that'll take us up probably to the last breakout activity, and we'll take a break just before that. And then we'll probably call it a day. No, not call it a day. Then we'll do a final exam review for anybody, optional final exam review for anybody who wants to stick around. And we'll repeat that final exam review again with a little bit more detail tomorrow. Any questions on the process going forward? I appreciate, by the way, very much being able to lean on you guys that do this on a regular basis, being able to lean on your experience. So what is a protest? Written objection by an interested party of the maybe the cancellation of a screening information request, the award or proposal award of a contract is being protested, or termination or cancellation of award of a contract. They don't like that and they're protesting it. So the FAA is committed to early resolution of any kind of a protest. ODRA uses mediation. They've got a good process for fact finding. They're big on alternative dispute resolution. They want to keep this thing from boiling over and ending up in the courts if at all possible. All contract disputes with the FAA need to be resolved through ODRA. Everybody has a contract. There's a clause in there requiring them to work through ODRA, but even part of the bid process, any bid protests have to go through ODRA. The procedures are laid out in CFR mentioned here, 14, CFR parts 14 and 17. When it goes to judicial review, it's in accordance with the U.S. Code, Title 49, Chapter 46.110. And this applies to all final agency decisions. Has anybody here worked with ODRA on a bid protest? I'm sure. So filing a contract dispute can be by mail, overnight delivery, hand-delivered facsimile, electronic filing, if permitted. There is a little bit of a format requirement if a company chooses to file a protest. They have to be in writing. They have to contain the contractor's name, obviously, the contract information, the contract number and the name of the CO, chronological statement of facts. This is what happened in order as I see it, and the legal grounds that they believe are the basis for their protest. They have to be some kind of proof that was filed in a timely fashion. I'm not sure what the window is, but there's just a little bit of time that you have to file a protest. You have to request for a specific remedy. Okay, this is the facts as we see it. Here's a legal basis. This is what I would like to see occur if my protest is successful. And of course, there has to be signed by an authorized representative of the initiating party. So I know Anthony was able to stay out of protests for at least 8 years worth of construction work, but surely some of you other guys have worked through ODRA on some kind of a protest.
I haven't worked through ODRA. I'm in the middle of procurement now. I hope I don't have to. Um, I've had protests in the past, in my past experience,
Uh-huh.
but I think those two, one was essentially the party that was protesting was an interested party, and the other protests, one of the unsuccessful offers intimated that the successful offer didn't have the experience that they stated. So we had to get permission from the winning offer to share their experience information. We got their permission, and then we showed it to the successful offer after getting that permission. And then once they saw that, they withdrew it. So those were the closest things I've had to actual protests per se. But I haven't worked with Odin again. I don't hope I don't have to work with him in the future.
I'll say this about ODRA. It's not legal representation. It's not like legal counsel. Okay, legal counsel is on your side. They argue your perspective to your advantage. ODRA, it's important that they are seen as independent. So they're not representing the FAA interest. They want to understand exactly what happened and be fair and to the point of the law. Okay, so they. If it wasn't so, contractors would be really resistant to bring their protests to ODRA if they didn't sense that ODRA is going to do their best to stay objective and fair in their approach.
They're
Sally,
the
did
family
you?
counseling of contracting.
The family counseling. Who said that? Was that Brad?
Yeah.
That's funny.
That is funny.
Sally, did you have your hand
for
up?
our dysfunctional family? So I don't know the gentleman. I recognize your voice, but I don't know your name, that was talking about his experience with ODRA. But isn't that kind of like a way they can get insider trading information on where to improve? But is that the point? Do you know what I mean?
Oh, you mean for a bidder will file a protest to figure out how to do better in the future?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
That's
But
what
if
the
like
debrief is for.
Yeah, that's is really what the debrief is for. And especially if, like Anthony said, that they did in their construction department for 8 years, if the focus and the intention if of the debrief is really to help the contractor, and if you do that in a way that's real positive, I don't think they need a protest. I think that was Anthony's experience. Is the all
Correct.
the yeah, yeah. If they get the sense the FAA, this agency, this department, this contracting office is helping us to be more competitive in the future, I think that takes away the motivation. But if they didn't get that feeling, I know a lot of the DoD stuff. If you don't win, you're out the door, and better luck next time. At least that was what it was like when I was bidding on stuff for the DoD. I hate to say it, but 30, 35 years ago. But there, if you don't feel like they're trying to help you, encourage you, and find a better way to do it, then I could see, yeah, like you suggested, Sally. Then you think a protest is generally warranted just to get a better idea of how we did or where we were deficient and how to fix it next time. So I hope that's not the motivating factor. Any other thoughts on ODRA?
I was just curious. That's all.
It's a good question, and I could see that happening. An exploratory protest. Okay, look, this is the last thing of the day. Okay, matter of fact, the slide after this says, "Congratulations for completing the source selection training." So this is really the last thing. This is an exercise. It's in your student guide on page 249. We can do this, and I'll put this to you. If you want to take a 10-minute break first and then do this as the last thing, we can do that. Otherwise, we can go ahead and finish this exercise, and then anybody who wants to just call it for the day can leave. And of course, we'll do an optional final exam review for anybody who wants to stick around. So if you prefer we finish this now, give me a green thumbs up. If you prefer we wait and take a 10-minute break first, give me a red thumbs down. And a lot of people seem to not care one way or the other. Okay, so we're going to do this right now. And then as soon as we finish this, it's going to take 15 minutes in your breakout room. Then however long we talk about it, 5-10 minutes afterwards. Then we're done for the day. But if you want to stick around, I'll do an informal final exam review, which we'll repeat again tomorrow. So I'll take you to the debrief room. I'm going to put you into your breakout class. This is on page 249 in your student guide. Make sure I'll put the instructions in here. 249 in your student guide. If you're still using the workbook, it's on page 63. Read and discuss the case. This, of course, like the title says, has to do with somebody filing a protest late. Read and discuss the case. Answer the questions in the note sections of your breakout session. And I'll see you on the other side of 15 minutes. Any questions before I put you off? Okay. I'll see you in 15 minutes. Matthew, we've got to get you back into your breakout group. Okay, got you back in the main room. That was the last breakout. I'll never do that to you again. So welcome back to the main room. That was sort of a quirky little case. I love looking at breakout group 2's notes as you wrote this, where you said, talk about splitting hairs. This is very much splitting hairs. So let's just open it up to the floor. They got their protest in the last day of a 10-day window, 5:30 and 35 seconds. And we wanted to throw it out. This was, I don't know which agency, the VA. Yeah, the VA wanted to throw it out. How do you think the GAO ruled on their request to throw out this protest? Anybody? Okay, let's see. Frank Burns said dismiss the protest, missed the required deadline. Group 4, AMS professionals. Say they think GAO found in favor of the vendor. So Brent thought so, and so did Anthony, in favor of the vendor. So the protest stood. The best value team said, okay, splitting hairs. Technically, it's still 5:30 for 60 seconds. So I guess the GAO accepted it. And group 1 said, accept the protest, having been received by GAO of 5:30 and 35 seconds less than a minute. Kind of said the same thing as group 2, worded a little bit differently. How come you guys are so quiet? What's going on here? Did I not turn something back on?
I can hear you, Jim.
Okay. And well, the GAO agreed very much with what group 1 and 2 said. The due time is 5:30 on the last day, and it remains 5:30 until the clock clicks over to 5:31. So the GAO said the protest stands. The VA, it was worth a shot to try to get them to throw it out because does the gate close at 5:30 or does it actually close at 5:31? Turns out it actually closes at 5:31. But I wouldn't anticipate a lot of people are going to get protests that come down to the last second. And a 10-day window for a protest, I don't know, what is the protest window for FAA? That seems kind of generous to me. Anybody know what the protest window is?
It's strange, Jim. I'm seeing people with their mics on, but I'm not hearing anything. Do we want to do a audio check?
Yeah, this is really strange. You know what? I didn't hit end breakout.
Okay.
Would you
That's
recommend
hilarious.
so? Oh, never mind.
Yeah.
Let's try that again.
Some microphones. Yeah, we'll try that. Microphones spinning. William got kicked out, but he doesn't need to go back into his breakout group. We're not going back, but it looks like their phones haven't come up yet. Brian and Anthony, extra long this time for some reason. Get everybody back in. So I've got you back to what I did. You don't know this, but Mark and we on breakout group 2, and I talked about a question and nobody answered. So I discussed the nobody answered, and then I asked for comment. And after I realized I never closed the breakout groups. You guys for all that time. I'm still not
Hey, Jim.
hearing anything.
Yeah, there's a serious lag. I think we're having some.
So what can we do at this point? I'll try starting, and it looks like a lot of people logged out. It's a good thing this is happening. I'm going to try just for fun and giggles, starting the breakouts and shutting them back off again. Okay, so people came up a little bit faster this time. Can you guys hear me now? Somebody turn on your microphone and say something.
Hey, Jim,
don't
I
hear
can
anything.
hear you, but we're all experiencing some. Oh,
Howard says I'm cutting in and out. So maybe the issue is on my side. Oh, so apparently Adobe Connect is having issues across the board. Okay, I closed the breakout groups. Most of you should be back. I'm going to clear everybody's status real quick, and could you give me a green thumbs up if you're back from the breakout group and able to hear me? Not good. Mark, you're the only one. Okay. All right. I'm going to put in the main chat. I'm
Jim,
going
can you hear
to
me?
exit. I hear you now. Yeah. Who's this?
I can hear you.
Jim is
Okay.
frozen on mine.
Me too.
You're frozen?
Yeah.
Totally.
I can hear you.
Is
Can
it
you?
only us, or is this to everyone?
I
Everyone.
think everyone, if you look at the chat.
Yeah.
Yep.
No video of Jim either. I'm
I
going to shut my
see
video camera
Jim
off.
just circling.
Okay.
Jim, if you're out there,
Yep.
it's happened not 3 times.
Yeah, as a matter of
Okay.
fact, I just
Give
went
me
out
green
and
thumb.
back in for that reason. I thought maybe it was me. But no video feed available.
Okay. Interesting.
Okay. Knock, knock, knock.
Try this again.
You better not be trying to get out of that test review.
No, I was
Can
just wondering if the 15-minute rule applied.
Okay. I
15
shut off
minutes,
the.
5 seconds. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, you got to be
Uh,
specific.
I'm going to
Let's
log
see what
off
I'm
and log
posting
back
here.
in.
Well, I'm not good.
Somebody cue the lobby music.
That's funny. Okay, I'm gonna exit, Mark, and I'll log back in.
Yep.
Behind the main.
Someone really did find some music, huh?
That's awesome. Thank you.
Hey, can you guys hear me now?
You're 35 seconds late.
New lobby. Who's this?
Oh, that's funny. Okay, your account will undergo urgent maintenance. It says I got a notice, but not until April 28th. Well, it needs urgent maintenance right now. I'm back. You know, it's funny. I discussed the case, and nobody was there. Nobody said anything, and I couldn't understand why. Then I realized I hadn't closed the breakout rooms. Then I closed the breakout rooms, discussed the case again, and nobody said anything because we were having audio problems. But you guys can hear me now. Give me
Yeah.
some-
The irony in the subject matter of this case, as compared to the fact that you had trouble getting back on in time.
Yeah, that is funny. That is, yeah, this was just a demonstration of issues, technical issues associated with this case. I wish. Let's discuss this, and then we're done for the day. And I appreciate your patience hanging around and waiting for me. And I mentioned this is a third or fourth time now that I've come on here and spoken to an empty audience, to an empty room, saying I love Group 2's comment that where they say talk about splitting hairs. You're really coming down to the last 35 seconds. I don't blame the VA for appealing to the GAO and say, hey, throw this out. Of course, because it's FAA, they're not protesting with ODRA. They're protesting with the who's that body that fields the other agencies' protests? It doesn't matter. They have a group that receives protests for government contractors. So I couldn't understand that. Okay, so Group 2 also said this. Technically, it would be 5:30 for a full 60 seconds. So I guess the GAO accepted it, and that's textbook. The GAO says it's 5:30, guys, and it remains 5:30 until the clock ticks over to 5:31. So even though Frank Burns said, you're late, it's 5:30, time's up. The gate doesn't close until 5:31. It remains 5:30 for a full 60 seconds. Group 1 kind of said 35 seconds, less than a minute. It's probably go ahead and hear the protest. And Group 4, I think, said the same thing. Oh, they said the likely decided to dismiss the protest. Protest was filed 35 seconds beyond the deadline. Okay, no, they did. That's interesting. So it split 50-50. The GAO said
no. Group 4 said that it was valid to accept it.
Okay, valid to accept the protest. Yeah.
Okay,
it was
still 5:30.
Okay, so they dismissed the request for dismissal. Got it.
Yes.
Okay. So it's interesting. It kind of comes down to brass tacks, getting it in right. I can't imagine. It seems to me, what is the window for FAA protests? Is it 10 days like it was in this case with the VA? It seems like 10 days are extremely generous. Does anybody? It's 3 days for if you want to get a debrief. You've got 3 days from the time you get the announcement of the award that you were not that you didn't win. You've got 3 days to request a debrief. I don't know how long you have on a protest. There is a window and it closes after a certain amount of time, but I'll have to look that up. I don't have that offhand.
I believe it's 5 days after the 3 days. Once everything is disclosed, you have 5 days.
Yeah. I didn't think it was 10 days, but I didn't.
No, 5 days.
I don't remember exactly what it was. Okay, interesting little quirky case. This is all about splitting hairs. I'll go on to the final slide of the presentation. This is congratulations, we made it. We've got a final exam, 30 questions tomorrow, 70% required. That's 21. We'll have 90 minutes to complete. You have to get 21 questions correct to get 70%.
That's correct.
I'm going to walk through some of the questions. Good questions I don't worry about. We talked about it. The material's straightforward. The question makes sense. You guys are gonna hit nothing but home runs. My concern is it takes a lot of effort to write a good test. And if you don't put the effort in, it's easy to include questions that are just a little confusing. So I want to be sure and address those. I'll do it again tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. We're going to take the first maybe hour, and before we get into the 90-minute final exam, and review the test again. But we're done for the day. If you want to stick around and review the test questions with me, stick around and do so. Otherwise, I'll say have a nice evening, and I'll see you tomorrow. We'll be back here at 9 o'clock Eastern for the last day of this course. Yes. Yeah, that's a good idea. So I'm looking at the lobby clock. Let's do a quick 10-minute break before we get started. And the rest of you, if you decide not to stick around, thank you. I enjoyed the heck out of the discussions. A good group, lots of experience, always makes for good discussions. And I'll see you on the other side of 10 minutes.